Alright my people, welcome to Utawala. This is a suburb of Nairobi. It's on the far east end of Eastlands, Nairobi. It borders Machakos County. And before we get all the way into this one, I kind of wanted to recap a little bit for perspective's sake. What is Nairobi? How did Nairobi get here? Why is it so big and major today? And it is big and it is major. It's comparable to Dallas and New York, like something in between as far as the enormity of it, the population, and culture in some ways. But Nairobi originally was swampland, and it was the British that made it the railroad depot in 1898. In 1900, the tiny little town of Nairobi actually had a health outbreak, some kind of plague, and was burned down and started over. And then within 7 years they made it the capital city and it flourished. But we're talking maybe 1920s, it was only 24,000 people, and it's come very far. Now with that said, if you follow my channel for long enough, you remember we all learned together that Eastlands is the biggest section of Nairobi. And Nairobi is basically broken into many sections. So Nairobi basically consists of sub-counties and wards and electoral constituencies. You could think of it like boroughs and outliers and suburbs. I think the key word might be constituency. What they've done a lot of is annex sections for tax purposes and voter-based purposes. So a lot of this expansion, that was the original reason that there was a lot of Mau pushback whenever we talk Kenyan history of the colonial era and what really spurred different aspects of the anti-colonial movement. That was at least one factor. The expansion was encroaching on other native land that was nearby, and look at it today. This place is blown up. So Umoja, we walked through Umoja, right? Just a few years ago, maybe a couple of years ago. It was a bush about 35 years ago, 40 years ago. Not completely. They had developed it into a suburb, yes, but it had a lot of green spaces. Those green spaces are gone. That's another topic about overdevelopment and very poor urban planning. So this is one of the biggest, fastest growing sections, suburbs surrounding the city. This main road we're on, it's the Eastern Bypass, a rather new road. It stretches all the way across Utawala. There's another section on the far end where it goes south of this road, but everything to the right is on the north side. You see in some of the clips the construction trucks and construction workers. This footage was from a couple of years ago, so I'm even outdated. I need to update. I need to have a lovely return to Utawala and just see how these developments have gone, but I'm hearing good things. I imagine typically with fast growth and lack of planning, which is rather typical, that there might be some water issues, security issues, power issues, but honestly, it's hard escaping that in Kenya. If you want to have water, you need to get your own property and make sure you stock your own water tanks. If you want to always have power, you need to make sure you have generators, solars, propellers, whatever it is that you're into for producing your own electricity. That's also another topic for another day. All in all, I dig Utawala. If you're looking for a place to build a house, buy a couple plots and graze some goats and grow some produce and get into small scale farming, peace, I would have to say Utawala's got to be up for consideration. If I was to try to lay roots in the Nairobi region, this would definitely be at least my top 3 consideration, top 5. I would have to review them again and see how things have evolved, because things are changing quickly all over Kenya and especially all over Nairobi. So the next time you land in Kenya, when you look down to the north end of that airport and you see a bustling neighborhood, my friend, that is Utawala. You might pay to visit. They do have nightlife, they do have your standard shopping, they do have your supermarket chains, they do have a lot of green, very colorful roadside produce, and essentially a good taste of Nairobi culture without the congestion, without the extreme hustle and bustle. So it's a place where you can really experience Nairobi in a relaxed way. Another little history rewind at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It was officially opened by the British during the colonial era in 1958. It was around 1972. It had been changed to the current name. Originally, it was Embakasi Airport. And prior to that, the airport in Nairobi was actually in Eastleigh. But when the British wanted to expand that airport into an unprecedented international airport, they had space issues, probably what we would call zoning issues, residential issues. So they went out here to this land on the outskirts of the city next to the bush, laid out some ground, laid out a runway. So ultimately, this airport was expanded again in the 1970s. It's still one of the biggest, most major airports in Africa. It does have a very spicy reputation, but it's definitely a pride and joy of Kenyans. Why? Well, it's a big old airport, and it's also the place that takes you out of the country, into the country, and you can travel around the country from this airport. Just as well, you can travel to neighboring African countries out of this airport. There are the international liners that are landing, such as Emirates, Air France, and others. But you'll also find UN planes there, and you'll also find local airlines like Jumbo Jet there. And they've done a lot of renovations at that airport in recent years as well. So it's a quite lovely place, sitting right there next to Embakasi. And that's one thing I do love, is aviation and airplanes and airports. So when I'm in Utawala, I really like the fact that I get to see some planes taking off and moving around. It just kind of keeps me excited about life. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope y'all enjoy Utawala. Peace and love.